Welcome back to Find My Wings. This is Jesse. Today I want to finally introduce you to my other car. This is my 1971 Vauxhall Firenza SL 2000. I'm going to show you around a little bit, and today our main goal is to really just make sure that this is running happily. And then over the next probably few weeks or few videos or so, we'll actually get into getting this car reliable enough to bring it to my house. And then we'll have some other cool stuff that we can do at that. So again, this is a 1971 Vauxhall Firenza SL 2000, which means it's a 2000cc car. Now this is the two-door with the notchback. And so you get this car in a fastback, you can get it in a wagon, or you can get it in a full sedan four-door that looks very similar to this. Now, right now, the car is very original. It's got about 26,000 original miles on it, and they're all very original. So you'll see that this car has some good old patina on it, and there's some things that do need a little bit of work. But overall, the car is in pretty dang good condition, considering this is in Canada. So these are actually the stock rims, but just with these kind of middle caps removed, and so they just become a center cap and a ring, which I always thought looked pretty good. Now, this car is a 4-speed manual. We've got our 3 pedals here. Again, very original car, so it's not perfect. This is just what life has really done to the car, but overall it runs nicely, it drives nicely, it's got a little bit of maintenance done to it already. We're going to shoot some more videos about this car, more from a historic perspective. This is actually the 50th anniversary of this car being in Canada, and so we're going to do a bit of a more feature-length kind of movie, film, biography about this car in coming weeks or months. Still trying to figure all that out. But at a high level, this is really one of the survivors. So this car was actually owned by General Motors Canada for a number of years as a reference car. So when another Firenza would break, they would take parts off of this car, put them on the car that was broken, wait for the parts to arrive, and then put them back on this car. So this car had a little bit better maintenance than the cars around it. Initially it was sold to an older lady who only owned it for a couple of years. Then went into the possession of some kind of a body shop, mechanical shop, until the late 70s. At that point, the fellow that owned it when I had first seen the car had bought it. And so at that point, he had actually done some work to it, and so you could convert these cars from a 2-liter to a 2.3-liter, from a 2000cc to a 2300cc, and luckily his brother owned a Vauxhall dealership in England, so it has those parts. This is a 2300cc car at this point, as far as we can tell, which matches up to the information we got when we first looked at it. And so I'd actually had another Vauxhall Firenza, which is in that garage right there. It's really a project car at this point. And we just always looked around because you couldn't find parts. And we happened to find this car just driving around near Long Point, Ontario, and when I was probably like 13 or 14. And it was for sale, but the guy wanted way too much money, didn't have that much money, especially at that age. And so it never happened. And then years later, in university, this car came up, and my parents were gracious enough to be able to allow me to keep it here and actually help me retune it and make it nice and drivable. And so we'll take it for a bit of a drive today, and we'll look at some of the things that are going to be needed to get this car to be a little bit more reliable. So we're going to pop our trunk here, which is just a lever up on the underside. Oh, look, it had some vacuum hose issues, so we did get new vacuum hose for it. That's going to be one of the first things to look at. My dad actually got this out this morning when we were on our way down here, and did get it running, squirted some ether in it, and it started right up. I had a couple issues the last time I tried to start it, so that was enough to get it running. Alright, so here we are. This is a 50-year-old car with a lot of normal wear and tear. It's sat in a lot of garages for a lot of time too. Got a newer battery in it. Some of these hoses you can see have been replaced. It's got new oil in it, new oil filter. It's got new brake master cylinder, new brake system basically all the way. Filter in there. And so you might be noticing that this is not a normal looking 4-cylinder. This is a slant 4. And so we actually have basically half of a V8 where it's firing up on an angle like this, and this cylinder head's here. And this is just one Stromberg 175 carburetor right now. These do take well to the Weber carbs and other things like that, which may happen one day, but not right now. But you can see 50-year-old engineering from England, existing in Canada with all that corrosion. But this car is very oil coated, and so it has a chance, at least, to make it through and have some more years on it. The part that I want to look at is that you can see these hoses here cracked. This one cracked right off. And so I got some new hose. We're going to try to look through the diagrams, figure out where all these go, and redo them before we get this car running too much. I think it is just worth it to redo vacuum things on a car this old either way right now. Sorry, Roy Foss is actually in Toronto, not Oshawa. So my other one, my blue Firenza that I'll talk about eventually, is the one that's from Oshawa. I always get that mixed up in my head. My dad actually corrected me there. It's a very unique looking car. So the people that designed this car were the same people that designed the Firebirds and a lot of the Pontiacs of the era, so it's got a lot of Pontiac in it. But it is a British car. This was made in England. You can see in our trunk here, this is kind of a better representation of the state of the car. We don't have all that rust, surface rust, and just oil and everything. It's a pretty well kept car. And we also have this air cooler in here. This is basically our package of stuff to go to car shows with. So full tool set, a couple of chairs, some fluids, blanket, an old water bottle, and a bunch of stuff in an old Coolman cooler. Including a shop manual, which I need to try to figure out this vacuum hose issue. So I'm gonna try to figure that out right now. This is what we're looking for. So this 1 is actually good. 3 just goes to itself, which I need to replace. 2 goes onto somewhere on the carburetor, and 4 is just a breather, so it probably doesn't even need to be too worried about if we don't have anything that fits it. So let's go figure it out. Okay, so as you can see, this car's been through some parts. These ones did not take well to the heat. Looks like somebody in the past had done that. They're new ignition wires, but didn't do well with this valve cover. It came off there, but I'm not too worried about it. That's fine for right now. This is all new. This is off an MGB, so it was just a part source, so cross-referenced all the part numbers and eventually figured out that this one fits the car because you, of course, can't get Vauxhall parts in Canada. And that brings us to the vacuum hose that actually broke. So this one connects at the top, connects at the bottom, broken, we're gonna replace it. And then this one connects to the top here, and it just connects right here onto the carburetor itself. So let's replace these, and it should be running pretty happily. So got the old one off here, try to get our new one on here nicely. They're just 1/4 inch, actually fuel line or multi-use fuel vacuum hose line. And we're just gonna put it right into the back here.
I'd leave that one off till you get your other hoses off. I'd leave that end off till you get your other ones off.
Oh, like this one?
Yeah, because you're gonna have reefing on it.
Yeah, that's a good call.
My 2 cents.
No, I would agree. So let's pull this guy off. It's probably gonna rip it. It's already pulling it off the bottom. Another piece. So this one. Put this back on. Pretty good. We got this one. This piece off. I think that it is thicker is making it harder to get back on. Another piece here is going to be putting our new sticker on. It's be expired now because everything shut down for COVID. Vauxhall. And we're legal again. So all the baffles came out of the muffler when we were driving it up here for the first time. So it's a little loud, but still pretty usable comparatively to other cars, even like the FRS. We're going to put some new fuel in it too. So this is V-Power Nitro Plus because it has 0 ethanol and it is built to clean out a motor a little bit. So I figured it might be worth it for this. And we're going to do the goal of doing 5 tanks through it, and so we'll try to fill it and run it through 5 tanks, and at that point we'll just start putting normal fuel probably in it. Anything that doesn't have ethanol will be the goal though, so 91 octane in Canada. And I mean at this point, probably take this car for a drive. We got new insurance slips, we got our tags, vacuum hoses are replaced. I'll fill it up with gas and take it for a rip. So before we get this car started, because this is a weird import, the ignition's on this side of the tunnel because they use the same tube, I think, as the right-hand drive car. And so when you start it, you're actually pulling it towards yourself, which is interesting. So I'm gonna get this started up and let you hear it a bit. You can hear by that sound, we're pretty sure this is no longer a 2000cc car. And so we'll go up in displacement. It'll also run more like this, just low and thick and rumbly. So while we're waiting for this to keep warming up, let's talk about the interior a little bit. So you can see our rearview mirrors do need to be replaced. They kind of work, but they really don't. Basically, this adhesive has just corroded through the actual mirror. And so it's been on here for so long, it's simply gone right through. Now, of course, manual mirrors, just a really quick little latch here. Inside, the carpets and things, of course, completely original. Everything in this car is still original. Now we have these interesting little pop-out windows in the back here, which sometimes stay open, sometimes they just kind of close as you're driving too, like any old van that you may have been in. There may have been one or two people that have ever sat in the back seat of this car. It's pretty okay. We'll have to redo all the carpets and stuff in it one day, but I kind of like it, just being old and historic the way it is right now. The headliner is pretty okay in the back, but until around the corners, it's starting to go a little bit. And this car does have the round vents in it, and this nice linear gauge cluster here. The radio just cracked a little bit on it, so we're gonna have to pull this out and redo it a bit. Plus I have a original 8-track player that we might install in here one day and play some 8 tracks. This is an old car, got a nice dashboard crack. This thing will need a big rejuvenation to come back to original, so we're just gonna enjoy it with the patina that it has for now. This rearview mirror is working pretty okay. It hasn't gone through, and there was never a passenger side mirror on this car, so this is really all that we got. You can see that we have the light on for the parking brake, and there's an ignition light on, which is just kind of stays on this car at this point in time. It doesn't seem to cause any running issues. And so, you know, this car runs, it's happy. It will get through a trip and things like that, but it could do with some refreshing just here and there to make it prettier and happier and closer to its original specs. So let's take it for a drive. The first time this thing's above half too. So this is just an AM radio too, if anybody had a question about that. And then this is just a 4-speed manual with reverse up to the top left here. Handbrake still works. See, there's lots of dust and things in here, so we need to vacuum it out and give the carpets a little bit of care, but let's take it for a drive. There's the apparatus. This is like the least formal clutch ever. There's like an inch of movement that's all valid to be on or off the clutch, either way. It's actually kind of nice to get used to driving manual and something like this. See, some of the dying trees finally came down here. And when you do warm the car properly, the gauge cluster does work for the most part, but the speedometer's not great. It's a little inaccurate, so if you're gonna take it for a long drive, you're probably better to use a GPS speedometer or something on your phone. It doesn't matter too much for today. And it's being nice to us today, too. The throw in the clutch is like really far, and it's also a really light feeling clutch, so it doesn't give you much confidence either. But it's kind of fun because it's got a lot of play in it. You can see on the speedometer here that when the car is warmed up properly and driving nicely, the speedometer actually works, but sometimes it just does this, and you don't really know where it's at. So it's good to keep an eye on and have a backup GPS speedometer. I should note this is on very original tires. I believe they're from the 70s or early 80s, which are going to be getting replaced, so that'll be one of the next things that we're going to do, is to replace those tires. But they're fine for a drive like this. Just don't trust it doing maybe like an hour plus drive.
2-1 the count on hits.
It's on.
And the pitch. Change up, and it's hit up the first baseline, but it rolls foul, 2-2.
You're backfiring. Might not come in on the
Jonathan
camera.
Davis is into the game defensively for the Blue Jays. He has come in left field to take the place of Lourdes Gurriel. Reaching for it, ground ball to third. Espinal with plenty of time to throw on the 1-1 down.
Hear that AM radio going here? It's all the stations that come in. And you're ready to throw all your gears because you only got 4 of them.
6.5.
Just driving through the park. Let me take a little minute to admire this thing and sit by the lake here. Alright, so this has been an introduction to my 1971 Vauxhall Firenza SL 2000 that is a brutally original. Again, this is probably only one of a couple, maybe 3 or 4 of these in Canada and then North America as a whole, because they were never sold in the United States. They're a global car, so you'll see Firenzas, Vauxhall Vivas in different countries. A lot of people will say that this is a Viva, not a Firenza, but in Canada, it's not true. This is a Firenza. So we're gonna make a crap ton more content about this car, doing some cool stuff to it, with it, comparing it, and then trying my hand at actually making some full out, really cool content for everybody to actually see here. So thank you very much. This is Jesse. This is Find My Wings. I'll see you back here shortly. Don't miss these videos because they're about to get a whole heck of a lot more fun.